अनन्तं विभुं निर्विकल्पं निरीहं शिवं सङ्गहीनं यदोङ्कारगम्यं निराकारमत्युज्ज्वलं मृत्युहीनं परं ब्रह्म नित्यं तदेवाहमस्मि. We shall chant the few verses, whatever we have done, then we'll start. That is third chapter, beginning verses. Arjuna vacha jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tat kim karmani ghore mam नियोजयसि केशव व्यामिश्रेणेव वाक्येन बुद्धिं मोहयसीव मे तदेकं वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयोऽहमाप्नुयाम्. श्रीभगवानुवाच लोकेऽस्मिन् द्विविधा निष्ठा पुरा प्रोक्ता मया नघ ज्ञानयोगेन सांख्यानां कर्मयोगेन योगिनां न कर्मणामनारम्भात् नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोऽश्नुते न च सन्न्यसनादेव सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति. So up to 3 we have discussed in great detail. Yesterday I went over to different other chapters also to explain the words of Shloka 3. Now Shloka 4. So first he said that the two, they are only Dvividha Nishtha, they take us to the same goal. Only the path has to be selected according to the fitness of the person, according to the deserving qualities, whatever he has, or the qualities, the person, the parameters of his character, his mind, intelligence, etc. Depending on that, the path has to be selected. So I also said that very few are generally fit for the Kevala Jnana Nishtha or Jnana Yoga. Most of the people are fit for Karma Yoga, and this is the Bhagavad Gita's excellence, because Upanishadic Vidya was restricted to very few persons in the hermitage only. Krishna, or you can say Vedavyasa, introduced this Bhagavad Gita in Mahabharata, by which he made available the same goal of the Upanishads to everybody, those who are employed in any field of work, with the only one condition, that they seriously want to attain that goal, and they have to, in that case, change their attitude with which they are performing the actions. That we have been discussing again and again. So it was a revolutionary introduction of Bhagavad Gita, that the Upanishadic goal was presented for everybody on earth, that anybody can follow it, provided they are ready to change their attitude. They replace the carrot of happiness at the end of the work by understanding that the happiness is a offshoot of our own mind. and understanding that the happiness is disturbed by the desires. So the happiness does not lie in the fulfillment of the desire, but elimination of the desire. On that understanding, that when the mind becomes desire free, even if we have some desire, we can pursue it, but knowing that it is not going to fulfill me forever, then there is no trouble. That is what the kings also were doing. Everybody were doing that. Once we know that this I want to do because of some necessity, maybe some physical necessity, sensory necessity, or mental necessity, some support, this, that, I can do it. But very well understanding that it is not only going to bring me sukha, it will bring sukha, dukkha both, and I should be ready to embrace both sukha and dukkha equally. And the ultimate fulfillment in life does not lie in any of these enjoyments, but having a mind which is free of all desires. There lies the ultimate fulfillment. Knowing that, we can pursue, and when we pursue any desireful activity with this knowledge, then we find that very soon we outlive the desires. The desires themselves get sublimated by that. We will no more be slave to the desires, because already we have overcome the slavery, knowing that you cannot delude me anymore. We are deluded that it will make me fulfilled. Once we understand that, then you can tell the desire very well that, well, I will feed you, but knowing very well that you are not going to catch hold of me forever. I will fulfill, I will enjoy you with a mastery, that I will not become slave to you. Suppose when we need money, there is no harm in getting money. Money is necessary. It is a necessity for having the food, having habitation. For everything, money is necessary. But what happens is that when we start getting money, we want more and more money to have more and more comfort. And very soon we realize that the money is not bringing in happiness. We have become slave to the money, and we have started accumulating money. We are not using it for happiness really, and we are afraid of losing money also. Money becomes a point of competition which takes away our happiness, and we become slave to the money. So once we understand that by such thing we are never going to get fulfilled, then we can pursue whatever desires, minimum desires, are the needful, whatever is there. We will not have the greed then. We will not be slave to the desires. So that is the Karma Yoga Bhagavad Gita is suggesting. Now this Karma Yoga also, although we are calling it Karma Yoga, it needs a full understanding of the truth. So it is a combination, we should understand that it is a combination of knowledge and karma and bhakti also. As we study the whole Bhagavad Gita, we will understand that it is a great synthesis presented in Bhagavad Gita. It is wrong to say, आप भक्ति मार्ग में हैं या ज्ञान मार्ग में हैं. वैसा कोई मार्ग नहीं है. जो सचमुच के साधक है उनके लिए भक्ति मार्ग, ज्ञान मार्ग, कर्म मार्ग बोल के कुछ नहीं है. तीनों मिलके ही होता है. कोई जब सचमुच के साधक बनते हैं तो भक्ति के बिना वो ज्ञान मौखिक ज्ञान है, वो सचमुच के ज्ञान नहीं है. ज्ञान के बिना भक्ति मोहकारी है, वो उससे सही भक्ति नहीं बनेगी. To have the proper Shuddha Bhakti, it cannot happen without knowledge. May not be the full knowledge of it, but knowledge is necessary to have Bhakti. And in 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you will find that the Bhakti and Jnana are just tossed this way, that Bhakti leads to Jnana, Jnana leads to Bhakti. Like that he has represented there. Because ultimately what we call Shuddha Bhakti and we call Shuddha Jnana, Bhakti is Striling, so we say Shuddha Bhakti, and Jnana is Pulling, so we say Shuddha Jnana. Ultimately this Shuddha Bhakti and Shuddha Jnana both are same, identical. And karma, just if you act, it will not lead you to this goal. It has to be Karma Yoga. That is, Bhagavad Gita is present in the Karma Yoga, means you do whatever activities you are doing, but you change your attitude, make it yoga attitude. So the karma becomes yoga when we have the yoga, we act with the yoga attitude. कर्म योग बनता है जब हम कर्म करते हैं योग भावना के साथ, योग भावना के साथ जब करते हैं. एंड व्हाट इज योग भावना? सिद्ध सिद्ध्यो समो भूत्वा समत्वम योग उच्यते. टू हैव द इक्वेनिमिटी, इक्वलिटी, इवननेस ऑफ द माइंड in siddhi, asiddhi, sukha, dukkha, good, bad, everything, to have an evenness. Now this evenness will not come unless you have a rudimentary knowledge or a very good knowledge of the Atma. Because ultimately this samatva means you have to know that this multiplicity, infinite variety is actually existing on one truth, our consciousness. When we are aware of that, then we will not be caught by anything, by the raga dvesha, by the differential notion, we will not be caught. So that is the karma yogena yoginam. That those who would like to pursue this karma yoga, for them we have to practice this samatva yoga, and that has to be taken to the ultimate level of atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjuna sukham va yadiva dukkham sayogi paramomata. I have discussed all these things as a summary, just I told you. Now when you come to the next verse, he says, na karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam purushosnute na cha sanyasanat eva siddhim samadhigacchati. He has taken up two concepts here. One is naishkarmyam, another is sannyasa. Now both these concepts are very attractive in Upanishadic Vidya because they are the ultimate level. They are the ultimate phase of sadhana. Naishkarmya, as such, the word means no activity, no action, actionlessness. Now, naturally, people will think that Naishkarmya means not to do anything. Now, not to do anything is physically almost impossible. That means you have to be always in a samadhi. Even to live the life also, there will be some activity going on in you. For Sharira Yatra, he will tell later that for the body to live also, we have to have some activity. Without activity, nothing can be there. So, Naishkarmya is misunderstood as leaving all karma. So, we have to understand what is this real Naishkarmya first. And he says that na karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam purushosnute. That one cannot get this Naishkarmya by not doing any karma. Not doing any karma will not take us to the Naishkarmya Siddhi. There is a book called Naishkarmya Siddhi written by Sureshwaracharya, which is, we have Prasthanatraya, another we have Mahaprasthanatraya in the further level. Prasthanatraya is the Upanishads, Brahma Sutra and Bhagavad Gita. Mahaprasthanatraya is Naishkarma Siddhi, Advaita Siddhi and something else. So it is very much regarded as very high concept in Vedanta and very attractive concept also in the Upanishadic Vidya. So he says that not just by not doing any work, you cannot attain Naishkarmya. And also in the second one he says, nacha sannyasana deva. If you take up sannyasa, which again means, what it means, I will go to the another shloka, but it means leaving all the desireful activities. Kamya karma, that means desireful activities to leave. Nacha sannyasana deva siddhim samadhigacchati. Only by such a sannyasa also siddhi cannot be had. So what is real sannyasa and what is real Naishkarmya, we have to understand. Now to understand sannyasa, you go to 18.2 and 6.12. These two we will see. First let us go to 18.2. 18th chapter, 2nd verse. There he has defined sannyasa. Got it? Kamyanam karmanam nyasam Sannyasam kavayo viduhu sarva karma phalatyagam prahustyagam vichakshanaah. Here, because Arjuna wanted to know what is sannyasa and what is tyaga, so this shloka comes. He has clearly defined as kamyanam karmanam nyasam sannyasam kavayo viduhu. Sannyasa is called all leaving all the kamya karma. That is not normally we are doing activities which are all desire motivated. So to leave all desire motivated activity is called sannyasa. As you know that generally they leave home, they leave their profession, they leave their income, everything, whatever money they have, and they pursue only this jnana sadhana. Sannyasa, for sannyasa actually truly speaking only jnana sadhana. Sannyasis are not supposed to do any worship, any other thing at all. Whatever they do, it's as a extension of their jnana sadhana. So, sannyasa means leaving all desire motivated activities, he said. Now, here he says that nacha sannyasanat eva siddhim samadhigacchati. If you leave the desire motivated activities, that will not lead you to siddhi. That suppose somebody leaves all desire motivated activities and go to the cave and sits in meditation. It's a sannyasa. But it will not lead to siddhi. Sannyasa is an internal attainment. Here both in Bhagavad Gita, both Naishkarmya and sannyasa are representing internal state. Naishkarmya is the knowledge by which we come to know that I am neither a doer nor an enjoyer. That is getting rid of the doership and enjoyership. In Sanskrit, it is called kartritva, bhoktritva. Bhoktritva means enjoyership, kartritva means doership. When the doership and the enjoyership goes, then you don't have any karma at all. Although you may be more active than others. Our Swamiji does work 10 times the other people. You might be tremendously active. What did Vivekananda do? What did Shankaracharya do in his 42 years or so? Shankaracharya traveled all over India, and how many places he has set up, how many scriptures he has written. Even writing a scripture, is it not a work? Everything is work. So this is an internal attainment where anything you do, you will not feel that I have done anything. That is, there won't be any past for him that I did something great and you feel egoistic about that, I have done something great. There won't be any future also, I have to do this, I have to do that. Whatever his qualities are, whatever is the necessity of the circumstances of the society, whatever comes, he goes on doing. But he never feels that I am the doer of anything. This, I will go back to last year's because I don't know, even if you have been here, you must have forgotten. Last year before last, I had taken the 14th chapter here, the Triguna Tattva, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas and all. Year before last I had taken, no? There, 14th chapter, 19th verse. 19th verse you open. There he says, after defining the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, etc., which are the three modes of which the whole creation is made. Now he is saying, Nanyam gunebhyah kartaram yada drashtanupashyati गुणेभ्यश्च परं वेत्ति मद्भावं सोऽधिगच्छति नान्यं गुणेभ्यः कर्तारं यदा द्रष्टानुपश्यति गुणेभ्यश्च परं वेत्ति madbhavam sodhigacchati. See, this is great because of the last half of the sentence. What is he saying? Madbhavam saha adhigacchati. That is, one who sees the, for whom this is the state, one who has done this, for him, he attains my bhava. Krishna says, Madbhavam saha adhigacchati. Means he becomes like me. He attains my bhava means he becomes like me. Krishna is saying. Now, what is Krishna? Everywhere he has used that me, my, etc. in the sense of the real identity, the Atma, which is not divided by the body-mind complex. When we know who am I really, that is one, even transcending one also. That Atma cannot be fragmented at all. The Atma is the consciousness in which the whole world is appearing to be. Atma is the consciousness in which whole world is appearing to be. What does it mean? Whole world, does it not contain your body, mind, personality also? That we have to remember. Otherwise it will not come. If you think the whole world is in my Atma and I am having the body, mind, personality, then this will not be the proper understanding. The whole world which contains in it as a small speck my body, mind, personality also is appearing in me. So my body, mind, personality becomes a speck in the world which is appearing in the Atma. So can I call that Atma is in me or I am in the Atma? Which is a more correct statement? I am in the Atma is a more correct statement. I means the body, mind, personality is in the Atma. But that I have to associate with that real I in which the whole world including this body, mind, personality is also appearing. It's all made of consciousness alone. I have made a very good PowerPoint demonstration for it. But there I have used the Mickey Mouse as the person. That created all the problem. Because Mickey Mouse is a patentized character. Without asking permission from the Disneyland, we are not supposed to use him. So this was created in USA. When I was in USA, I created this for explaining it in a, I had gone to a university to speak, so I thought that we will speak something very philosophical. So for that I had created it. But we had to ask then when we came to know that Mickey is a, what do you call it, patented character. So we asked, we had written to the Disneyland, looking into the internet, they said that you can get the permission within 3 months or so, something like that. But so far they have not given any permission. So I have to ask again Padmakar to, I have told him again to chase it and get the permission. Poor Mickey is lying concealed in my laptop. That first picture is Mickey is seeing the castle. Then the next picture is telling the truth. Is Mickey seeing the castle? That is the outside Mickey. Is he seeing that? Or what Mickey is perceiving is the castle inside his mind. Unless you appear in my mind, I will not know you, which is happening during sleep. If you show something in front of the eyes, we will not know. So until any object appears in my mind, I will not know. In my consciousness, till then I will not know. Agree? Only so the external world is appearing in my consciousness. Also thoughts, emotions, unless they appear in my consciousness, we will not know. So both the external world and the internal world of thoughts, emotions, virtues, whatever, they are all appearing in my mind, in my consciousness. There we were segregating, some we are calling external, some we are calling internal. अच्छे से सोचिए, हम जब देख रहे हैं कुछ, बाहर का कुछ जो देख रहे हैं, बाहर में जो है वो हमें समझ में नहीं आएगा जब तक ना वो हमारे मन में वो पिक्चर होता है, तब तक समझ में नहीं आएगा. तो मन में कुछ पिक्चर जो बाहर का देख रहे हैं वो हम सोचते हैं बाहर, और मन में ही जो चिंताएं, वृत्तियां, भाव उत्पन्न होते हैं, वो सोचते हैं इंटरनल है. Truly speaking, everything is internal only. There is further fallacy also. What we are seeing beyond the eyes, are they not only nerve pulses, the electrical pulses flowing through the nerve? Is there any picture beyond the retina? It's all electrical pulses going. Even when we are touching also, these are all electrical pulses going through the nerves. In the brain, some cortices where the excitation is taking place, according to that we are having an idea of vision, sound, touch, everything. And what is the vision, what is the sound, everything. Everything is literally constituted in the mind. Because just before that, outside and inside, it is all electrical pulses. There is no color, nothing at all. It's all created there. Now, what I was saying is that this is explained in our Shastras very well. I will use the Shastric terms. I am often, अगर हिंदी नहीं बोलते हैं तो यहाँ बहुत लोग समझते नहीं, तो हिंदी बोलने का कोशिश करते हैं. अगर संस्कृत या हिंदी बोलते हैं तो ये लोग समझते नहीं, ये मलेशियन है. तो मुश्किल है हमारे लिए. We call, there are 3 kinds of Akasha. Akasha means space. One is called Bahyakasha. Bahyakasha means whatever we are seeing to be the external sphere, space. Then we call Chittakasha. Chittakasha, Chitta means mind. Chittakasha means the space of the mind. ठीक है? Now, is not Bahyakasha really a part of the Chittakasha, is my statement here. So, the Bahyakasha is getting telescoped in the Chittakasha, because that is part of the Chitta. Now, there is another Akasha called Chidakasha. Chit Akasha, Chidakasha, which is the consciousness. This Chitta, whatever is appearing in the mind, and as the external universe as well as the internal universe, that is only in my mind, which mind is limited by the body-mind personality. But I, this body-mind personality being part of the whole universe, it is all appearing in the Chidakasha, the Chit, the consciousness, which is not fragmented by the body-mind personality. The whole universe with the body-mind personality is appearing in the Chidakasha. So actually Chittakasha is actually a part of the Chidakasha. All the Chittakashas of you and me and anywhere, all those Chittakashas are part of the Chidakasha. The Chidakasha is the ultimate Akasha. Why did I say that? Huh? Now, that is Mickey Mouse. I am demonstrating this only through Mickey Mouse. I have shown that in the second picture, the thought of the Mickey Mouse in the comic books, as you show like this. So there, second picture, actually the castle is in Mickey's mind. In the next one I am showing, all are in the mind, where Mickey is seeing the castle, and in Mickey's mind the castle is appearing. All are in that mind, in the Chittakasha. That is the Chittakasha of Mickey, understanding his own Chittakasha. Then I am showing a picture where the whole universe is a state of the consciousness, where everything that Mickey is seeing, he is not seeing, everything is appearing in the Chittakasha, in the Chidakasha. So the whole universe becomes a state of the consciousness, of not the consciousness limited by my body-mind personality, but the one single Chit, which we say the Atma, the Paramatma, Brahman, everything is same. The Atma is not different from Paramatma. Because we are isolating it with the association of the body-mind personality, we are calling it Atma, different from Paramatma. When we understand that this Atma is only an appearance in the Paramatma, then the two becomes identical. We will come to it again and again when necessary. Now here I wanted to say it because Nanyam gunebhyah kartaram yada drashtanu pashyati. Gunebhyah anyam kartaram na pashyati. That is, generally whenever we are doing something, I am doing with the body-mind personality, the faculties, with the body, with the mind, everything we are doing. But beyond that, we are positing an ego that I am the doer. It is done by nature's product. Nature's product is hand, leg, mind, intelligence, everything is nature's product. Whatever is changing is nature's product. But we are positing an ego behind that I. Actually, the physical ego is there, it has to be there. Without that, we cannot function. Physical ego means the hub of our personality, where we are connecting the different memories, different perceptions. If that ego gets damaged, then we become non-functional. Split personality is one case where the ego gets damaged. Then when we become, because of some stroke, we become vegetative, that we cannot function anything. There the hub of the personality is getting spoiled. We are not able to relate things. It can be of various kinds. So that physical ego has to be there. What we mean by ego generally is egotism, the ahankara. That we are positing that I have done this, I have done that. Actually, it is nature's product, everything. The nature has given the body. The nature has given us the power. That power, those instruments are functioning. That is the gunas. Gunas means which is making the nature. Gunas are the constituent of the nature. Guna guneshu vartantaha iti matva na sajyate. Another place Bhagavad Gita has. That it is all gunas function. The various forces of nature, they are playing this. In the play, they have generated some organic elements, then they have generated some lively elements, then some other animals have come, then the human beings have come. They are all the play of natural forces going on. We are positing a special ego or egotism behind that, that I have done this, I have done that, I am doing this, I am doing that. When that becomes clear that it is all like a gunas functioning, I am not getting touched by anything at all. I am only the sakshi of whatever. Actually, that is also not true, but at least that much, that I am the sakshi of whatever is happening. Then we don't see any other karta beyond the gunas. So in this 14th chapter, in this verse, he is saying that yada drashta gunebhyah anyam kartaram nanupashyati. See, they have used anupashyati. That means it is not a direct seeing. Whatever we are seeing, following that, we are positing an egoistic I-ness there. That I have done this, I have done that. A karta. This kartritva bodha will go when we understand that it is only a phenomenological thing. The instruments of nature, they are functioning. I am not doing anything. If I is there, the consciousness, it remains untouched by everything. Then, gunebhyascha param veti. He sees something transcending the gunas. Madbhavam sodhigacchati. Transcending the gunas what? That real I, the real identity, the consciousness which never gets, which never changes, never gets fragmented. It is not identified with any body at all. It is one and beyond one. That he knows. Param Vetti. He knows that consciousness. Then he attains my bhava. So Naishkarmya is this bhava that I am not doing anything at all. I have not doing means I have not inactive also. Suppose initially we said that people remain inactive by thinking that it is Naishkarmya. But because they have doership, try to understand this point. Because they have doership, when their body, mind is not functioning, they are calling that I am not doing. Actually, that has no meaning. Because of the doership, they are saying I am now acting and I am now not acting. When I am not acting also, the sense of not acting is coming because of your doership. वो acceptable नहीं है. हम जब करते हैं तो हम सोचते हैं कि हम कर रहे हैं, वो डूअरशिप है. जब हम कुछ नहीं करते हैं तो हम सोचते हैं हम नहीं करते, वो डूअरशिप नहीं है क्या? वो भी डूअरशिप, वो भी कर्तृत्व है. हम सोचते हैं कि हम नहीं कर रहे हैं. तो काम नहीं करके कभी नैष्कर्म में नहीं आने वाले हैं. जब हम देखेंगे कि हमारे ऊपर सब पूरा दुनिया नाच रही है, पूरी दुनिया नाच रही है, सब कुछ काम हो रहा है, गैलेक्सीज आर गेटिंग बॉर्न, गैलेक्सीज आर डिस्ट्रॉइंग, एवरीथिंग इज टेकिंग प्लेस हियर, बट आई एम नॉट टच्ड बाय एनीथिंग एट ऑल, देन ओनली इट बिकम्स नैष्कर्म्य सिद्धि. आई एम नॉट अफेक्टेड बाय एनीथिंग, एनी चेंज हैपनिंग इन द यूनिवर्स. कुछ भी चेंज हो वो हमें स्पर्श नहीं करता है. जैसे यू थिंक दैट द सन इज रिफ्लेक्टेड on a lake, there are so many waves. So each wave is producing a sun. When you see each wave, you will see a reflection of the sun, and the sun will dance according to the movement of the wave. Is it not so? The reflected sun will move according to the wave. We think that the sun is moving, but is the sun moving? The real sun is not moving. It appears to be moving. So when the wave goes, we find that the sun has gone. Suppose there is a wave. When it subsides, we will feel that that sun has gone. Actually, nothing has happened to the sun. It was the wave which was reflecting, that has gone. Like that, we often ask, what happens to my Atma, etc. Nothing happens to the Atma when the body falls. In your body, the Atma is just like the reflection of the sun. What we think as our I, generally we are utilizing, that I is the reflection of the real I in our buddhi or in our bodhi. It's the fundamental of the where from the buddhi is rising there. There's the origin of the buddhi, where all revelations take place. Because when we say buddhi, we think that the buddhi is the analytical part of the mind. That is what we call buddhi. But the real revelation takes place not by analysis. It takes place where from the buddhi also is rising. Suppose that you are. How do you know you are? Is it by buddhi that we have to analyze and prove that I am? Even if I prove you are not, you will say that I know I am. How do you know? That is the bodhi. Where it shines, that is your I, that is the consciousness. Just below that is the consciousness. So there it shines. That is called the bodhi. So, the consciousness we always feel is that I-ness which is shining in the buddhi. So when the body dies, that reflection of the chit goes. But nothing happens to the chit. The chit remains as it was. I have another example. These are very lofty concepts, but if you can understand, it's good. Suppose the sunlight is coming from the top. Now you can hold a mirror here, a small mirror, and reflect the beam. You can see the world with the reflected beam in that mirror. You can move the mirror and see the world wherever you want. Now the reflected beam will have some characteristics of the mirror. Suppose the mirror is yellow colored, then the reflected beam will be yellow. If the mirror is teda, then it will show a distorted figure. Depending on that mirror, you will see the world. Suppose we have 5 indriyas, we see the world in one manner. Suppose we had 10 indriyas, then the world will be different from us. So that is only the characteristic, the charitra of the mirror, according to which we are seeing the world. Now, we can place millions of mirrors in that sunlight. All will reflect the sunbeam in its own manner, and they will see the world with that. Agreed? So, this reflected beam is like what we are generally thinking I am. Our small I, associated with the body-mind personality, is like this reflected beam, which is showing us the world. We are interacting with the world with that beam. So when the mirror breaks, the reflected beam is gone. But has anything happened to the sunlight which is coming down? So if before the mirror breaks, you can identify that I am not the reflected beam but the sun. If I think that the source of the reflected beam is the mirror, is it right? That is what we are always seeing. You had said yes, but that is what we are always thinking. That this I, with which the consciousness I am functioning, that source is me. Actually, the source is the Chit, which is reflected in our buddhi and giving us the idea of the small I associated with the body-mind complex. So we have to know that I am not the reflected beam, but the original beam. How will you know? You start moving the mirror towards the original beam. Move the mirror towards the original beam. When it becomes exactly perpendicular to the original beam, is there any reflected beam? It has got merged with the original beam. The two has got merged. Exactly this thing we do in practicing samadhi or to experience the self. What do? We sit, we forget about the world, we try to look within where from the I is coming. Is it not so? Self means the I. So we have to locate where from the I is coming. Where from the I is coming. Oh, it is not the body because I am the seer of the body, I am the knower of the body. Body is an object before me. The mind also, I am knowing the thoughts. It is revealed by the I. So the mind is an object before the I. ठीक है ना? Similarly, the emotions, the intelligence, everything I am seeing as object before me. So that is not the I. I is the subject which is revealing the body, the external universe, the internal universe of mind, emotion, intelligence, any thoughts, forms. Everything is revealed by that I. Then how to look, how to find out what is that I? You have to take away from all that is being seen. So you have to forget the whole world. Now mind you, when I say whole world, it includes your body, mind, personality. I am meditating, I have to discover the self. Hoga nahi. As long as that small I is living in your vritti, it will not happen. Because still you are having that object sense. You are looking at you as a object of the universe. So looking within towards the I means you are turning that mirror towards the main beam. So the turning has to be complete when nothing in the world will be any more visible, including your own body-mind complex. So this is a merger where, although we are trying to look at the subject I which is seeing the world, finally it becomes beyond subject and object. The both object and subject comes from this. Unless we go beyond this subject and object duality, we will not be able to identify, we will not be able to have this merger. That may not be clear to you, no? That is, you have to forget the whole world which includes your body, mind, personality also. Then only the self will be revealed. The consciousness will be revealed. Suppose now I am seeing this microphone. Unless the consciousness reveals this microphone, we will not know that it is there. But when the consciousness is revealing the microphone, our focus is on what is revealed and not on the revealer. Revealer, consciousness. We never never try to know what is the consciousness. Our focus is on what is revealed, the microphone. Similarly, when you are looking inside also, the focus is on what thought is there. The thought is revealed by the consciousness, but your focus is on the thought. The moment the thought is revealed, your focus is on the thought, not on the consciousness which is revealing the thought. So always by our tendency to look at something different from me, that is, I always want to know, even self also we want to look at self as something different from me. I want to look at the self as objective something before me. So as long as we are trying that, the consciousness is getting engaged in that object. Is it not so? It is taking the form of the object. When it is revealing the microphone, the consciousness is taking the form of the microphone. When it is revealing a good thought, the consciousness is taking the form of the good thought. When it is revealing a bad thought, the consciousness is taking a form of the bad thought. When we have some Ishvara darshana, say I am a worshipper of Shiva and I have a darshan of Shiva, then my consciousness is taking the form of Shiva. So everywhere it is taking a form. The consciousness is getting engaged and creating a form, and our focus is always on the form. So only when we have left everything, forgotten everything, the consciousness has nothing else to reveal. When we have left everything, forgotten everything, then the consciousness is not getting involved or engaged in anything at all. It remains free. So it reveals itself only then. But it does not reveal as an object. It is a revelation which we call aparokshanubhuti or advaya. It is non-dual revelation, because the subject of the division also will not be there. So to have this Naishkarmya, we have to go to that extent. Only when we know that I am like the sun, which is getting reflected in so many waves. The waves are dancing, with that the images are dancing, but nothing happens to the sun at all. I am the original sun. The reflections are moving here and there. Like that, the so-called consciousness in the body, they are also active in the different bodies. But I am not touched by anything at all. Then he knows that I am not doer of anything at all. Nature is the doer. The gunas, the three gunas are playing their own game. I am only an observer of that. Actually, it is not an observer. I am, you can say, observer of that. So that is called Naishkarmya, that you understand that I am not a doer, I am not an enjoyer. It is all a play of the gunas. It's a play of the Prakriti, play of nature. And that is real sannyasa also. The real sannyasa is internal. Samyak nyasa. That is, I said, when we leave everything, the whole world, including my own body-mind complex, everything is left, everything is forgotten. Then only the self reveals itself. This nyasa means tyaga of everything. That means tyaga of ego that we have. That is called sannyasa. The real sannyasa is an internal. It's not in the outside dress or anything. So it is called, that is why we generally in our shastras we call two kinds of sannyasas are there. Vividisha sannyasa and vidvat sannyasa. Vividisha means to know, that yearning to know. Vividisha. Yearning to know. So people take up this sannyasa with the yearning to know the truth. So they change their outer life, they do not do other karmas and all, and they take to a no worldly action life to pursue this goal of attaining the real sannyasa. Vidvat sannyasa is called when he has understood that I am a sannyasin, that is, the real Naishkarmya has been understood. Then he becomes a misfit in the world. So he changes his dress or changes his ashrama. Either he may change dress or take to white or something. He no longer remains in any worldly activity. He remains as a spiritual person, doing good for the others, whatever to be done. Whoever comes to him, he does something. Otherwise, he is not having any desire-motivated activity at all. Whatever comes to be done, he does. So when the sannyasa is taken after the knowledge, after knowledge, it is called vidvat sannyasa. So two kinds of external sannyasas are also there. So here he is saying the nacha sannyasanat eva siddhim samadhigacchati. And in 18th chapter he has discussed the sannyasa is kamyanam karmanam nyasam. That is leaving all the desireful activity. So the real leaving of the ego will not occur even if you leave the desireful activities. The ego will still work inside. If he comes back to the society, again his ego will be punishing him. So until he understands that nanyam gunebhyah kartaram, yada drashtanupashyati, nanyam gunebhyah kartaram, yada drashtanupashyati, gunebhyasya param vetti, tad madbhavam sodigacchati. He sees something beyond the gunas, that is the consciousness in which all the gunas are functioning. The whole universe is dancing on that with these gunas. But actually they are all in the consciousness alone. They don't have any other separate existence. They are all made of gunas. Their energy is also made of gunas. Whatever divisions we see, it is the consciousness and consciousness alone. Then this Naishkarmya and Sannyasa both take place. In the 6th chapter, 1 and 2, open the 6th chapter. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha yam sannyasamiti prahuhu yogam tam viddhi pandava nahyasamnyasta sankalpo nahi asamnyasta sankalpo. It's a difficult word. Nahyasamnyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaschana. So this is what he is confirming again from whatever we are studying in the 6th chapter, 1 and 2. He says that anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha. Karyam karma karoti yaha. Karyam means whatever to be done, that action he does. How does he do? Anashrita karma phalam. Anashrita means, ashraya means taking refuge in, or you can say holding on to, clinging to. Anashrita means not clinging to the karma phala. Now, karma phala, don't think that it is the objective phala Bhagavad Gita is speaking. Whenever Bhagavad Gita is speaking about karma phala, it is the internal phala. In 18th chapter, he has defined anishtam ishtam mishram cha trividha karmanah phalam. 3 kinds, what I like, what I dislike, what I did not want, and a mixture of the two. They are all in our mind, what I like, what I don't like. Now, as long as the objective karma phala, the result of the action is concerned, can we do anything about it? It will automatically take place in the objective world. Is it not so? Suppose you walk to come to the CIRD. Will you not reach CIRD? After reaching, you will say, no, I did not want to come to, this is the karma phala of my walking or driving. I don't want to be in CIRD, I left it and went away. Suppose you put up a factory for making shoes. So you have to design the machinery and workers and everything so that the factory produces shoes. And when you do it properly, will not the factory produce shoes? Will you say that, no, I don't want the shoes after that? Objective phala, we cannot do anything. It will follow the causality. Even in subtle sense also, whatever we are doing, it is having an effect on the mind, that follows causality. Some causality we can understand, and some causality, they are subtle, we are not able to understand. Many things. We spoil our child and later on say, how the child has become like this. I have not been like this. But you have not been like this, but you have spoiled your child. Your behavior in his childhood has affected his character. We don't remember that. So there are subtle karmas also which are having the phalas, having the corresponding results. They may not be so gross objective. They might be subtle objective. But they will have their result. Any objective field, causality will work. In the entire creation, causality alone works. So there is no question of rejecting the karma phala. A girl became pregnant. 9 months she had been looking after the pregnancy. When the delivery is given, will she reject the child? We are studying to pass the exam. When the result comes, will we reject the result? There is no meaning in saying that the objective karma phala is rejected. This karma phala is the karma phala I am telling you for the last 3 to 4 days. It is the carrot at the end of the karma that I will become happy by that. That has to be rejected, nothing else. That I will have, that factory will produce the shoes, I will sell the shoes, that will go into the market and we will have money. And with the money I will have a 14-storied building and then I will be happy living there. That happy, you will not be happy. Even if you have a 28-storied building also, how many beds will you sleep? You can sleep only on one bed. You can stay only on one floor. You will not be happy. It will cause more of botheration. So, karma phala tyaga means that we are clinging to the end part of it, the carrot of happiness at the end of it. That has to be rejected. That nothing is going to be making me happy at all. Whatever to be done, I will do. And the moment you can leave that carrot of happiness, the happiness starts oozing out from you, welling forth from you. See the beauty of it. The moment you remove that carrot of happiness in front, you remove it really, you will find that you become blissful. That is what happens in meditation. How do people get the blissfulness in meditation? When they have forgotten everything of the world, then only they get the blissfulness. Is any desire remaining there? They have forgotten the world of desires. Because they have forgotten the desires, they are getting a bliss which they have never got anything from the world at all. They get flooded with the desire, with the happiness, the bliss we call. That happens only because of the elimination of the desire. Suppose you are wanting something very intensely. When that is fulfilled, will you not have more happiness? Is there any difference of opinion? You want something intensely. Then for that you forego all other things. When that desire is fulfilled, is not the happiness also strong, intense there? It is so. You know why? Because the intensity of the desire has kept away all other small desires, quarrel, everything, gone away. So when that is fulfilled for a longer period of time and in a wholesome manner, the mind is free of desires. In small fulfilling, it will not happen. But when it's intensely you are working, you have forgotten all your comfort, everything. Suppose you are working for something, some project. You have forgotten your sleep, you have forgotten your food, everything, and the project becomes successful. You become so happy for quite some time. Till the project, another difficulty comes in, you are happy. So, there also the intensity of the happiness is because of the intensity of the elimination and wholesomeness of the elimination of the desires that has taken place. So, this karma phala tyaga is that understanding the mystery of the carrot and removing it. The moment we can remove that carrot, we feel that we don't want anything to get joy. Joy is an offshoot of our soul. It is a self-spontaneous parameter of the soul. It is a parameter. It's a coordinate of the soul. It's a property of the soul. That is why we call it Satchidananda. Sat, Chit, Ananda. The Ananda is a property of the soul. We don't have to get Ananda from anywhere. The moment our Ragadvesha, or our attraction and repulsion that has gone and the mind remains placid, the Ananda flows by itself. Anandadhyeva khalvimani bhutani jayante. The whole creation has born out of Ananda. That the very fine vibration of the creation, that is what gives us Ananda. When we get into the samadhi, actually at that point there is no vritti. Mind is not functioning, intelligence is not functioning. Then slowly the world comes in there. First the I-ness, the ego comes and the world comes. So actually the creation is taking place in you. The creation was not there. In samadhi the creation was not there. Now again the creation is just like a flower blossoming from a कली को क्या बोलते हैं, bud. Like that, the creation is growing in you. At that point, you will feel that everywhere, as if it is flooded with ananda. Everywhere, it's as if it is the simmering ananda everywhere. Because the creation is born out of ananda. Ananda is the basic element there. जो बंगाली है वो ज़रूर पढ़े हैं, क्योंकि हमारे पाठ्य पुस्तक में था, रविंद्रनाथेर निर्झरेर स्वप्नभंग. That day, Rabindranath Thakur had the first spiritual experience. He was very young. He was sitting on the roof, and through the trees, the sunrise was taking place. Suddenly, he is expressing like this, as if waterfalls was hidden in the hill, was blocked by the stone. And suddenly that stone has got opened and the falls is coming out. So he has compared with that. So there he has spoken about this simmering ananda, that everywhere that is ananda. That experience will be there in such cases. Actually, the whole creation is born of ananda. It lives in ananda. It gets merged during dissolution. It gets merged in the ananda. So the ananda is an offshoot of our own soul. The more our mind becomes peaceful, the more we get the bliss welling forth from within. जैसे एक नदी तालाब में बहुत डिस्टर्बेंस है, बहुत वेव्स है, तरंग है, तो आप नीचे नहीं देख सकेंगे. नीचे का जो है वो दिखाई नहीं देता है. जब वेव सब शांत हो जाता है, तालाब जब शांत हो जाता है और पानी भी गंदा नहीं है, पानी भी क्लियर है, साफ है, तो एकदम नीचे तक दिखाई देती है. Like that, the mind, when it gets stabilized, it becomes peaceful, quiet, then it is seen. The ananda starts oozing forth. So actually we are full. We don't want that carrot of happiness. Provided we can eliminate it, that is the karma phala tyaga. Then we start working out of joy, not for joy at the end of the work. Generally we are motivated by getting some joy at the end of the work. We think sometimes it is, instead of joy, it is dukkha. But we think that I will get it. But that is no more necessary. Whether ultimately it is dukkha or sukha, it does not matter. Because whatever we do out of joy. That is why he is saying, anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotija. Whatever to be done, he goes on doing out of joy. Not taking ashraya in the carrot of happiness, that is the karma phalam. Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. He is at once the sannyasi as well as the yogi. That means whether he is renounced everything or he is pursuing the karma yoga, he has become a yogi, he has become a sannyasin. Sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha. See, it has link with the present chapter, what we are reading. Here also we were reading about na karmana manarambat naishkarmyam purushoshnate. Here he is saying that na niragnir na chakriya. Niragnihi, why? Niragnir means Agnihi is generally referred to yaga, jajna, etc. So in the karma kanda of the Vedas, they all do yagas. Now anybody who is doing yaga, it is with some desireful aim. That is, each yaga is done by doing this yaga, you will go to this Swarga, say Swarga 1. By doing the other one, you will go to Swarga 2. If you do it wrongly, you will go to Naraka 100. So all these things are spoken of. So anybody who is, suppose Dasharatha did Putra Kameshti yaga because he wanted child. With the desire of the child, he did that yaga. So Niragni means a sannyasin is not supposed to do any such activity motivated by desire. He will not do any of the karma kandas, that yaga, jajna, he is not supposed to do. A real sannyasin is not supposed to do. He may officiate, but he himself will not do. Officiate for others, but he himself cannot do any desireful activity at all. So it is not that you have left that Agni, that is the Kriya Karma, rituals. It means rituals basically. A sannyasin is not supposed to do any ritual, even ritualistic worship or any worship also he is not supposed to do. So a person who has left all rituals, he is not the real sannyasin. And akriyaha, a person who has left all the kriya, all the activities, he is also not a real sannyasin. A real sannyasin and a real yogi is one who is doing whatever to be done, anashrita karma phalam, removing the carrot of happiness from the front. Is it clear? Na karmana manarambhat naishkarmyam purushosnute na cha sannyasanadeva siddhim samadhigacchati nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krit karyate hyavashah karma sarvah prakritijair gunaihi. जोर से बोलिए ना. कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य यास्ते मनसा स्मरन् इंद्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारः स उच्यते. See, in the 4th verse, he has spoken about that like this, the nishkarmya cannot be attained, and like this, the sannyasa also cannot be attained, because both are internal attainment. In the Upanishad, you will find that in Mundaka Upanishad, see, initially they will speak lot about the philosophy of, not always, sometimes, of the Atma, Paramatma, Brahman, etc. But when you go to the end part of the Upanishads, they don't speak about these theories anymore. They only speak about generally desirelessness, clarity, etc. Because Upanishads are meant for knowledge. The ultimate of knowledge is purity, desirelessness, doubt-freeness, free of all doubts. Mundaka Upanishad, towards the end, it says, Vidyate hridaya granthihi छिद्यन्ते सर्वसंशयाः क्षीयन्ते चास्य कर्माणि तस्मिन् दृष्टे परावरे. भिद्यते हृदयग्रन्थिः छिद्यन्ते सर्वसंशयाः क्षीयन्ते चास्य कर्माणि तस्मिन् दृष्टे परावरे. He says tasmin drishte paravare. This is Saptami Vibhakti is used. It is called Sati Saptami. That is conditional statement. Tasmin drishte paravare. When the truth, tasmin means that truth is seen in the para as well as avara. When the Atma or Brahman or the truth is seen in para as well as avara, in the high as well as the low, not only in the virtuous people, but in the criminals also, everywhere. You cannot miss it anywhere. Not in the idle and not only in the idle, but everywhere. It has a still deeper meaning. As I said, all the words have deeper and deeper and deeper meaning. If you go to the deeper meaning, it means that generally we come to know of this truth going into the Nishchala Samadhi. Nishchala Samadhi means stillness. The mind is not functioning, the intelligence is not functioning, but they were all awake. They are all wakeful. Then only it will happen. So there we identify the Nishkriya Brahma, the Brahman, which is not associated with any activity at all. Now, there I am finding the truth. But when I am coming out of the Samadhi or the meditation, I am finding the world again. I am not finding the truth here. You get my point? So to get the truth again and again, you have to go to the Samadhi or meditation and find the truth there. Then is it the truth? Truth is that which is permanent, which is never changing. For knowing my own self, if I have to stop all my action, then is it knowledge? It is only an experience. It is only a state. So, in samadhi, we know the truth. Tasmin drishte, only in the samadhi. But to have this knowledge, you have to see him everywhere. When you are coming out of the samadhi also, you find that the whole world is appearing in that Brahman alone. There is nothing other than the Brahman. Even I am seeing something, that is also not there. Everything is fused there, merged there. There is nothing other than Brahman at all. That is why they have used para and avara. Here the para means your samadhi. And avara means when you are active in the world. It is apparently an worldly activity. But there also you will not miss the truth. We want that kind of an anchorage where you don't miss the truth when you are active also. That awareness, that anchorage has to be there. So the samadhi becomes redundant. Because you are unhappy with the present life, with your mind, with your intelligence, you are unhappy, you want to go to the samadhi and enjoy the bliss. Initially, when a seeker does it. But when you come back and you actualize this knowledge, you find everywhere that same truth. Then will you again go to the samadhi? And you will be happy with your mind. The mind will become so comfortable. It will produce only good thoughts, noble thoughts, universal thoughts, loving thoughts, that you will always be happy with your mind. You won't like to leave that mind and go to a state where the mind is not there, not functioning. Why should you want non-functioning mind when all the functions of the mind is generating enough of comfort and bliss? You get my point. So, tasmin drishte paravare, that means the truth cannot be known only in the samadhi. It has to become a knowledge, a known, actualized, known, realized truth. Whether you are active or inactive, it does not matter. Everywhere this truth remains fixed. You will not miss the truth in action. Everywhere the activities become, it is the phenomenal activity going on. I am not involved anywhere. I have not done anything. I don't have to do anything. By sitting, not doing anything also, I don't feel I am nishkriya. By doing also, I don't feel I am sakriya. Nothing. All the kriyas are taking place in nature. I am only a seer of that. So he says, tasmin drishte paravare. What happens then? Bhidyate hridaya granthihi. The knots of the heart gets broken. What is the knot of the heart? The ego. I am this small. I have done this great thing. Or I have done something very sinful. Both are equally. These knots are there, knots of desires also. Ego means ego is constituted of the desires, of various kinds of desires. When the desires fall off, ego also goes. So, bhidyate hridaya granthihi means the knots of the heart gets broken asunder. Chidyante sarva samshayaha. No doubt at all. The first one is the emotional part of the being. That is, ego is an offshoot of our emotional part. That I am small, I am this, I am that. So the emotional fulfillment comes when the ego is dropped. We become like air or space. So that is the emotional fulfillment. Next comes the intelligential fulfillment. Chidyante sarva samshayaha. Whatever doubts the intelligence raises, they all get dissolved. Chidyante sarva samshayaha. Even that, have I known, have I not known, that doubt also will go. Doubt will go mean it is not a confirmation that, oh, I have known or we have not known. But you will not bother at all whether I have known or whether I have not known. What is called knowledge and what is not called knowledge also, you will no more bother about it. You will be आराम से, like a big zero. इसीलिए उन लोगों को बोला जाता है परमहंसा. Baba used to say Paramahamsa means great gander. The goose gander जानते ना, Paramahamsa. It's a big zero. Sit comfortable. हाँ, तुम कुछ नहीं जानते हो, ठीक है, नहीं जानते, क्या है उसमें? ओ, तुम बहुत महान हो, सब कुछ ज्ञान मिल गया है. हो सकता है, ठीक है, वो भी ठीक है. नहीं मिला तो भी ठीक है. No further anything at all. No doubt at all. Even going to the samadhi also, people ask, was it then knowledge? Have I become known? That means the doubts are there. Such doubts should not be there. Tasmin drishte paravare, this emotional fulfillment and intelligential fulfillment, emotional fulfillment out of removal of all the constrictions, narrowness, ego, and intelligential fulfillment out of removal of all the doubts, all kinds of doubts. Of course, it doesn't mean that how many molecules are there in the table I will know. No. That is not part of the doubt. Doubt about our I, about the truth, about the world, that will go. About the appearance of the world, those will go. Then the third one is kshiyante chasya karmani. Kshiyante chasya karmani. For him there wouldn't be anything to do. That is why I recited this, just to say that. That is the Naishkarmya. That for him there is nothing to be done, not that he has done anything also. He becomes free of all karma. Kshiyante chasya karmani tasmin drishte paravare. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtati akarma kriti. Karyate hi avashah karma sarvaha prakritijair gunaihi. There cannot be anybody who can remain even for a moment without any activity. Activities will be there. Even the body will continue with the activity. Even if you don't do bodily activity, the mind will have activity. At least the unknown activities will go on, the pumping of the blood and the lung and all. Not only that, people will be being slave, they will perform something. Karyate hi avashaha karma prakritijair gunaihi. As he told Arjuna that even if you go to the forest, sannyasa is not meant for you, because your mind which has thought about the 13 years on the war, you cannot stop this mind now suddenly becoming sannyasin. The mind will go on thinking about Duryodhana and Rajya and all. See, I always say that the mind has a dynamic inertia. In physics, there are two kinds of it. Both are inertia, but two kinds we can categorize. Static inertia is if I have to push the table, I need a force. Without that, we cannot push. Suppose a car is standing. To push, you will need a force because it has the static inertia to make it move. But suppose the car is running at 100 kilometers. Is it easy to stop it? You need braking power. So that is a dynamic inertia that which is moving will try to move. So the mind does not have, the body has static inertia. Everybody is lazy. But the mind has dynamic inertia. You cannot stop the mind. That is why people are not able to meditate. Stopping the mind is difficult because throughout the day you have been thinking. You are unnecessarily thinking about so many things. You are calling the thoughts to you and suffering or enjoying or whatever. Then suddenly in meditation you want to become thoughtless. How can it happen? It has its dynamic inertia. All the thoughts will come more in meditation because you are free at that time. Throughout the day you have been inviting us. I will come now because now you are free. One after another thoughts, all kinds of thoughts will come. More thoughts will come during meditation. So meditation cannot be done like that. Unless throughout the day you have this anchorage in this truth. While you sit for meditation, the mind will undergo the dynamic inertia. You will not be able to stop the mind. So he says, Karyate hi avashah karma, becoming avasha, you know, that it is not under our control. Being slave, we will do. Go on doing. Nobody can keep still. Karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharaha sauchyate. He says, and if you withdraw your karmendriyas, that is, you don't do anything visible activity, but in your mind you go on thinking. रसगुल्ला खाते नहीं लेकिन हमेशा सोचते हैं कि बहुत अच्छा रसगुल्ला था वहां मिला था. That story of that prostitute and the sadhu is there, you know about it, very common story. One prostitute was there and a little distant there was a sadhu sitting under a tree. The prostitute used to think that if one day I can become like this sadhu, Every day people are coming, every day new people. I have to sell my body. What a life this is. See, the sadhu is sitting just like that. Throughout the day, night, he is sitting like that. What a good life. One day, will I be able to become like that? And you know what the sadhu was doing? He was looking at the prostitute's house, and each person go visits the prostitute. He keeps a stone here and counting how many people have visited that night. He is not doing that. Who is more corrupt here? Manasa. It is more what we are in our mind, not with the body. Manah kritam karma, natu deha kritam kvachit. Whatever we do with the deha is not really the karma. What we do with the mind. Indriyarthan vimudhatma, sa vimudhatma mithyacharaha. Such a person is mithyacharaha. That means he is only practicing mithyachara. Mithyachara in English, it means, what is it? English? Hypocrite. Hypocrite. He is a hypocrite. False. This manakritam karma, the second line I am not able to remember. It is most probably the second line is with the arms with which we embrace our fiancé, with the same arms we embrace our daughter also. That is, both are embraced with the arms, or our mother, let us say. Both are embraced with the arms. In one case, we are embracing our mother, and in another case, we are embracing our fiancé. So, where is the difference? In embrace, there is no difference practically, external. It is in the mind. So, that true, whatever we are doing, it is in the mind, not the external action. Okay, we will discuss. There are many things in this chapter. So, if I go so slow, I don't know where I will go. But there are many social dimensions presented here which I want to cover very well. But with my memory, words do not come. The thoughts also, it doesn't come always. So I have a real problem in expression. Prabuddham vimuktam vikaradihinam prasannam sada nityabodhasvarupam param nishchalam nirgunam sarvarupam bhajeham sadanusmarami pranomi. Prabuddham vimuktam vikaradihinam prasannam sada nityabodhasvarupam param nishchalam nirgunam sarvarupam bhajeham sadanusmarami pranomi.